All right. Second time's a charm.
There we go.
There we go. And we got audio from you. Beautiful. All right, cool. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Really embarrassing. Thank you for bearing with me there, Rowan. So I guess we'll roll this back to the beginning. I am Jason. This is Cryptosomniac, and we are here with Rowan Stone, the business development director for Horizen, and a bunch of stuff going on for them lately. Just celebrated, I believe, the 2-year anniversary. Sphere Wallet has been looking great, and also the Horizen Labs rollout, correct? So if there's anything else we should talk about, cool. But first, let's tell everybody on the channel a little bit about your background and how did you get involved in the project, how did you get involved in cryptocurrency, and how did you get involved with Horizen?
Cool. Absolutely no worries at all. So firstly, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Like you say, I'm Rowan Stone. I kind of wear 2 hats. So I have a hat where I'm Director of Business Development for Horizen, or the ZEN Blockchain Foundation, which is the organization responsible for kind of maintaining the Horizen technology platform. And then we also spun up a new commercial offshoot reasonably recently that's called Horizen Labs. And for that organization, I'm the VP of Business Development and Sales. So how did I get into this? Well, I got in through the mining route. I did an interview similar to this not that long ago, and I was asked when I first got into the industry, which is something I hadn't really thought of in a while. And I answered saying end of 13, start of 14, but since then I've realized that's completely wrong. I think the crypto land is kind of like, or a crypto year is kind of like a dog year. It feels like the amount of stuff that happens in a single year makes it feel like it's been a lot longer than it has. But it's actually the end of 14, start of 15. A friend of mine told me that he was mining some cryptocurrency. We've all kind of always been IT geeks. We've always built our own PCs and faffed around with gaming and things like that. So we've always had hardware lying around. So yeah, I decided to jump in. I pointed some graphics cards towards Litecoin, and they did pretty well, which got kind of interesting and exciting. So I decided to buy a whole bunch of equipment, and I filled a spare room in my house. And my partner at the time, my ex-partner now, got very angry and upset that I made the house super hot and super noisy. So I migrated from a spare room in the house to a garage, and then I ran out of power, and things kind of just escalated from there. At the time, so I'm originally from Scotland. At the time, I was working in the oil and gas industry in a much more traditional business role, helping manage an organization in the kind of oil and gas sector. And we were doing pretty well, but it just wasn't fulfilling at all. I kind of hated waking up in the morning and feeling like I was helping to destroy the planet. So as the mining became more fruitful and I was able to scale that operation up, I kind of wound down on the kind of traditional 9-to-5 work, and I jumped into mining full time. And through mining, I found Horizen, originally Zencash, back in when the project launched, May 2017. I remember when it went live, I didn't really do much with it initially. A couple of months later, a month and a bit later, they had a bit of problems with one of the core developers at the time. And what attracted me to the project was just how well they dealt with those problems. So that was kind of a moment where I pricked my ears up, and I ended up throwing a bunch of hash power and trying to kind of get involved in some way, shape or form to help them out with a bit of community creation and things like that. And then I guess the rest is history. They kidnapped me, and I've kind of been there ever since.
Very cool. Yeah, I know. I thought actually how Horizen handled, I mean, again, it's not to harp on a dead issue, but they had the 51% attack, and I thought actually how the team handled that was very professional. And, I think they've taken some pretty quality steps to prevent that sort of thing in the future. But that was just something I admired, is they owned right up to it instead of, like a lot of times when exchanges get hacked or things like that, they try to hide it or not disclose it and kind of make it shady for the users. But Horizen really steered right into it and said, hey, we did this, we messed up, these are the steps we're taking to correct it, super nodes, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought that was pretty admirable, actually. So.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to tackle problems is head on. That's the only way to do these things. When something like a 51% attack happens, there's a lot that we can do to mitigate the damage. And so when we first became aware, I mean, we had a kind of early warning system in place because at that time was a number of projects being targeted, and it was kind of, it wasn't a given that it was going to happen, but it was something that we kind of had an inkling could happen. although we were perceiving the risk to be much lower than obviously it ended up being. So we kind of had a bit of an early warning, and we spun up a team. It happened at ridiculous o'clock at night. We had basically the entire team, all hands on deck. We reached out to every single exchange partner that we had. And our kind of initial sticky plaster approach was to raise deposit and withdrawal confirmations right up to stop fast movement of funds through double spend. So we tried our best to kind of isolate the damage as best we could. And then as soon as we'd isolated the initial damage and we understood what had happened, and we understood the method that the attack was mounted with, we immediately went into figuring out how we could prevent that ever happening again, and really trying to take some long-term mitigation steps. I mean, ultimately crap happens, but it's how you really deal with these things that makes a big difference. So we like to think that we did a reasonably good job, and yeah, the mitigation steps we put in place of inputting a block penalty. So basically changing the core consensus for the blockchain. And our consensus, because we're kind of derived through Zcash and Bitcoin, the consensus model that was in place is the standard Bitcoin Satoshi consensus. So it's the longest chain rule, as in if somebody's mining on the main chain and then somebody mines in private, and they can build a chain that's a longer length, if you like, and then broadcast that chain back to the network, they can essentially inject their higher block height blocks fraudulently into the chain and cancel out transactions. So we wanted to try and prevent that happening again, and we did that by penalizing anybody that mines privately and then reports blocks back to the main network, so later than they should be. So we've done that. It's been in operation for a good amount of time now. Touch wood, we haven't had an attack since. That's either because our protection is working brilliantly, or it's because it's perceived to be working brilliantly. However, we're very confident in the solution we've delivered, and it's nice to actually see a variety of other projects starting to take notice and realize that this is something that could work really well to try and eliminate this threat for the industry as a whole. So yeah, it happened. These things do happen, but like I say, it's how you deal with them that really counts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And again, like I said, I just thought it was admirable how the team basically steered right into it and came out and said, this is what we did. And I didn't know quite the technical level, so that was an awesome explanation. So let's see. I've got the Sphere wallet. I think it's a pretty nice looking wallet. I know it supports just ZEN currently. Any plans to add other tokens to that wallet, or is it just going to be primarily ZEN focused? And then are there, it's got the news feature in there. Any other features you guys are planning on rolling out soon, or is that not your area of expertise to discuss? Tell me a little bit about that.
Quite happy to discuss. So Sphere was launched as kind of being our flagship app, and the whole idea was to really make something that was much more user-friendly than the wallets we had previously. So Sphere is where we're kind of piling all of at least our wallet efforts for the future. Will there be other currencies in the future? Probably. Are they right near the top of the queue in terms of development for the roadmap of that particular product? No, not just yet. So there's a lot of work to be done to really bring it to where we think it can be. And the ultimate aim here is making it super user-friendly and really having it as being the hub for the whole ecosystem. So big features, there's a new update that's going to be rolling out reasonably soon. It's currently in testing with our user experience and kind of customer support divisions. And this is basically us pooling some of the features from our previous wallet, Horizen, and bringing them into Sphere. One of the most important features that's kind of demanded by our community is a batch split and a batch withdraw functionality. And that's something that's super handy for people that run secure and super nodes for Horizen, because a secure node requires you to have 42 ZEN and a super node requires you to have 500 ZEN in an address. And your rewards for running these nodes on behalf of the foundation get paid directly to the address that your stake is in. So when you come to withdraw, you want to withdraw whatever kind of profit, if you like, you've made, but keep the 42 or the 500 in there. So the batch withdrawal allows you to extract anything over X amount from as many addresses all at once as you possibly want. It's a really handy way to kind of sweep your earnings back into a different address. And then batch split is a way of saying, take chunks of 42 ZEN out of this address and disperse them among these 10 addresses or 100 addresses or whatever the case may be. So just really nice, easy to use, kind of automated versions of the send many functionality that you can use through RPC.
That's a cool feature, man. I was thinking about, like, I know with Ripple and Stellar it requires you to have a certain number of each token, but basically you can never get it out. That's it, because that commits you to that wallet. So that's interesting. They could well, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like if they did want to withdraw the full stake, it would close down their, well, obviously it would close down their supernode, but I think that's a clever fix to be able to, you know, sweep the profits off without actually closing it down, or at least makes it a whole lot easier. Or does, I mean, well, tell me a little bit about that. So if it doesn't actually cause them to lose their node, what if they did accidentally leave it to where they've only got 41 in there? What's the repercussions? What's the consequences there?
Sure. So we're not really, I mean, we're a proof of work currency. So Horizen is proof of work. We use Equihash for our algorithm. We're not proof of stake by any means. So our node network isn't a kind of typical master node network. What we're doing is we are building a robust and strong kind of infrastructure layer, and we're going to be building products and services on top of that infrastructure. So our node network is the infrastructure. We're going to be building side chains on top of super nodes. Secure nodes will help with kind of dispersal and decentralization of the network. So rather than being proof of stake, we're basically paying people for a service. So the requirements that we ask people to meet are that they hold a small balance of ZEN in an address for a secure node and a kind of medium balance of ZEN for a super node, just to show that they have some skin in the game. But we've not made it artificially high. We really want to make sure that this is an accessible system for everybody, regardless where they are, which country, whatever. So we've tried to make it as financially accessible as possible by really lowering the barrier to entry, 42 being the answer to the universe. So obviously that had to be the amount for a secure node, clearly. So yeah, the requirements are that you must keep that balance in a wallet. Your node needs to have certain hardware requirements to make sure that it is sufficiently powerful to crunch a ZK snark, which is a shielded transaction. So we kind of send a challenge to each node every 72 hours to make sure that the nodes are robust and it's not just like a tiny amount of processor bandwidth on a tiny server somewhere, to make sure these things are actually strong and capable of doing what we need them to do. And there's a variety of other requirements. If you don't meet one of these requirements for X amount of time, then it simply carves that kind of non-compliant time out of your rewards. So for example, if you were to lose, or not lose, but you were to have 40 ZEN in your 42 ZEN stake address for a few days, you simply just wouldn't get paid for those few days because your node is no longer compliant. And then when you correct the problem, you'd be paid again. Similarly, if your node goes offline, we're asking for 92% uptime for secures and 96 for supers. I think, don't quote me, there's a documentation page that'll explain it better than I will. So yeah, if your node falls below that, then you lose some of your earnings. When you bring it back up to scratch, then you start getting paid again. Simple as that.
That's a pretty elegant solution there. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they can run supernodes directly from the Sphere wallet?
No, so what we're trying to do, like I say, is get a really strong and robust foundational kind of hardware infrastructure. So we ask that, I mean, you can use the Sphere wallet to stake, but you need to set up, we would recommend a dedicated instance on a server and have it run our tracking software and have it run our full copy of our blockchain and everything else that we request that you run on top of that going forward. We do that because we want to make sure that these things are up as much as possible. Typically, if you're running on a laptop, I mean, laptops aren't designed to run 24/7. Similarly, even desktops really shouldn't be on 24/7. They don't really normally have the cooling to keep that going. So a server somewhere, either in your own control, in your own server room, or in a data center somewhere, renting some space through a VPS, that's typically the way that people tend to run secure and super nodes.
Makes sense. You had mentioned the ZK snarks, and I wanted to get in a little bit to the specifics of your role within business development. So one of the questions I was thinking of is, do you guys find well, first of all, the first question is, how much of the business that ZEN is going after is in traditional markets versus just other like cryptocurrency partners, and then for the percentage of them that are within traditional markets or traditional business platforms, do you find any resistance from those businesses because you guys are a privacy focused token, or does that actually help your case in cases?
It can do both. So it entirely depends what jurisdiction we're speaking about. It depends on the kind of mindset of the company. But it's probably a good time to explain the split. So, like I said at the start, we have the Horizen Blockchain Foundation. Now it's responsible for the upkeep of the technology platform. It's currently responsible for the treasury rewards that come from a small diversion of block rewards. And they're allocated to make sure that engineering is consistent and we're driving towards a roadmap, and it pays for business development, for marketing, for legal, for everything the organization needs comes from that kind of automated budgeting process. So the Horizen Foundation, we're primarily focusing there on one half of the puzzle. So we're focusing on trying to bring really user-friendly products to the mass market. And we're also focusing on trying to bring, as much as we can, education to the mass market. So we're never going to get to a point where cryptocurrency is adopted in the mainstream if we don't take time as an industry to really spend energy and effort educating the wider populace about what this technology is, why they should care about it, why they should start using it, and most importantly, how they should start using it. I mean, we're still at a point now where most products and most services in this industry are super complex, and if you give them to your friends, your neighbor, whoever, and ask them to try and figure it out, they're going to be pretty stuck. So education is super, super important, and it's something that the ZEN Blockchain Foundation is taking very seriously. We recently spun up a completely free education platform, which you can get to online. It's simply academy.horizen.global. And we've tried to create content that caters for people at all different levels. So we have content for people that haven't heard of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and are kind of coming in this completely fresh. And then we also have some intermediate content for people that maybe have been in the industry for a year or two and kind of understand the basics, want to understand more about mechanically how these things work, and really how best to preserve their own privacy online, things they can do with VPNs, what a strong password use it, or how to create a strong password, all this kind of standard best practice stuff. And then we have a third tier that we're in the middle of creating, which is kind of advanced, kind of more for developers and engineers out there, really digging into the tech and understanding really how it works.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Was if you guys were planning on, offering resources so that developers can. I mean, it would only help the Horizen community, I would imagine, to have a more robust development community. So sorry to interrupt there.
Absolutely no problem. And yeah, you're completely right. I mean, ultimately, Horizen is an open source project. We want to have as many talented people rock up and roll their sleeves up and really try and make this the best it possibly can be. So if we can provide some tools and some information that really brushes people up and gets them to a point where they're confident enough to start learning more, then fantastic. So like I say, the ZEN Blockchain Foundation, we're kind of tackling half the problem. So we're trying to focus products at end users, and we're trying to educate end users. The other half that you mentioned is the kind of enterprise and business space. Now that's basically where Horizen Labs starts swooping in and trying to really help out, because if we want to get real user adoption, we need to tackle both sides of the problem. We need to make sure that we have a really low technical barrier to entry. We need to make sure that we have products and services that are simple and easy to use. We need to make sure that people understand why they should care about this and why they want to use it. But ultimately, we're still a team of roughly 40 people. And we are working ridiculously long hours to deliver upon our roadmap. But we're never going to make a big enough splash and get enough people really interested in a short space of time unless we also branch out and try and tackle the business and enterprise space. If we start partnering with large organizations and allowing large enterprise and even startup businesses to start building products and services on top of the Horizen ecosystem, that's where we're going to start seeing a real kind of ramp up in the amount of users that are using this technology. Rather than us going out and kind of adding a few thousand people a month, if we start having a technology platform where people can build products and services, we'll find that tens and hundreds of thousands of people are starting to come into this ecosystem through these genuinely useful applications. So that's kind of the idea behind the application platform, and that's the split between what Horizen's doing and what Horizen Labs is doing.
That's pretty interesting stuff. So yeah, I was curious. I was poking around the website and everything in prep for the interview, and was just not clear exactly on that. So that's a solid explanation. So let's see. I guess what sort of role are you doing there? I mean, how much hands-on actual day-to-day activity are you doing regarding the business development side? I mean, are you out there actually making connections and seeking out partnerships? And if so, what sort of partners is Horizen looking for? Ideally, like, what's your ideal client? What's your target market? I'm a former biz dev guy myself, so yeah, tell me a little bit about that. Like, who is your ideal client for Horizen?
So we have, like I say at the start, I have two hats. So on the foundation side, we're trying to partner with typically organizations within this industry to make ZEN as a currency as usable and as useful to the community as physically possible. The more usable and useful that ZEN is, the more likely people are to use it. The more likely people are to use it, the more likely they are to jump into the ecosystem, and that's how we gain users that way. On the lab side, we're primarily, at this point in time, trying to figure out where best to deploy the technology we have. And when I say the technology, so what we're building, we obviously have a completely open, permissionless, neutral blockchain in Horizen. And that is fantastic. That's a great way of providing immutability, and it's a great way of providing decentralized trust. However, a typical enterprise or a startup or a business that wants to build on top of a blockchain are going to need more than just immutability and decentralized trust. What they really want is the flexibility to define logic and the flexibility to define who comes and goes. So we kind of have two competing sides here. We have public blockchain that brings us the benefits that we all know and love, and we have private blockchain on the other side that is typically isolated, kind of akin to an intranet rather than an internet. And what we're trying to do with Horizen Labs and with Horizen through our sidechain system is basically create kind of our private-ish sidechains, but have them being able to fully communicate to the Horizen public main chain. And the reason we're doing that is it's a way of kind of bridging the two worlds and really bringing the best of both together. So if an enterprise business or any business or developer wants to build a product or a service, and they need to still maintain immutability and decentralized trust, however, they also need the flexibility to define logic, to define consensus, to define who comes and goes, this sidechain platform is an ideal way for them to kind of meet the best of both worlds. So with Horizen Labs, we're quite early in the development process. Horizen is working absolutely flat out on an open source SDK, which will allow anybody anywhere to launch a sidechain on the Horizen platform. Horizen Labs comes into this with a proprietary tool that will make it a much, much simpler process for people to spin up a sidechain. So that's kind of what Horizen Labs is pushing. Now, rather than just going out with a proprietary tool that makes it simple to build your own product or service on top of our infrastructure, we're taking it a step further, and we're really taking a step back, looking at the industry and trying to figure out where it makes best sense for us to deploy the hybrid blockchain solution that we are offering. So which industry verticals, which potential customers, which use cases make best sense for this technology. And we're spending a lot of time and effort on the research and development. We're still quite early. I don't want to give too much away. But some of the kind of low-hanging fruits that everybody's already talking about in the kind of enterprise blockchain space that we agree makes a lot of sense are things like tokenization. So tokenization of any kind of asset. That could be it could be equity, it could be debt, it could be real estate, it could be airplane, it could be literally anything. So securitization, fractional ownership, tokenization. That's kind of one really, really solid use case that makes a lot of sense for this technology. And then another one that we're looking at, that I'm personally looking at in quite a lot of detail just now, is in the supply chain management space. So in a typical supply chain, you have a purchaser who says, give me one widget, and a supplier who says, yeah, of course, you're going to get one widget in 6 weeks' time. A purchase order will be transferred, and then between kind of placement of order and receipt of goods, there's nothing. There's very rarely some solid communication. Most often you're just told that things are going great until it's late, and then you kind of find out. And then when your widget's actually delivered, you find out the documentation's missing. you put your widget in stock for 5 years and then you pull it because you need to do maintenance on whatever asset you're doing, and you find that the documentation is incorrect, or you find that the materials are wrong, or whatever the case may be. All of those problems can be solved quite easily by moving away from a traditional supply chain system and moving into something where a supplier creates a transaction every time something happens, and within that transaction they upload the data. So material has been made at the foundry, here's the material certs, and it's being cast or machined into this, and that's now a transaction and it's on the blockchain. And over time you build up a completely immutable record of kind of what that piece of equipment or what that piece of material is, so that when it makes it to the end customer, they've got a completely immutable and easy to access record of whatever's happening. Now, the piece that's really interesting for us is that a lot of people are trying to tackle this problem, but they're looking at it in strange ways. And I don't really want to give too much away about how we're looking at it just yet, because we're not quite ready to show our hand. However, privacy is a very big deal in supply chain. You can't do business effectively if all of your competitors understand exactly where you're buying equipment, how much you're buying it for, at what stage in the process it is, and things like that. So you need to have privacy. And that's something that we as a platform can offer very, very comfortably. So we're looking at a few different places. That's two of the ones that I'm kind of interested in personally.
I like the idea of using supply chain or cryptocurrency blockchain technology to verify supply chain. You know, we were fans of Origin Trail and some of those other guys. Something that I have thought about subsequently to this is, you know, for when you're securitizing real world assets, who's verifying that data? You know what I mean? Because ultimately, if it's like what there could be parties colluding to have incentive in between, saying yes, we shipped it from the factory, yes we received it here, and then still, you know, Joe businessman that ordered the widget still doesn't have his product because maybe those guys made a shady deal with one of his competitors. So what sort of incentives or what sort of actions are you guys taking to mitigate that sort of risk, or can you speak to that a little bit?
I can a little bit. I mean, like I say, it is still very early days, and I think it's probably worth mentioning at this point that the aim here isn't for us to be the company that's pushing products and services on the Horizen ecosystem. The aim here is for, wearing our Horizen hat, for us to build a technology platform that has the best possible properties to make it the most attractive platform for people to come and build on. And then on the Horizen Lab side, the real aim is for us to really seed the market by showing what's possible with this platform. So we're not going to go out and dominate the Horizen ecosystem. The aim here is for us to simply be one of many, many companies building products and services on top of the Horizen platform. But to answer your question, so blockchain doesn't solve every problem. We're still going to need traditional. Well, pretty sure. I mean, I've heard a lot of weird solutions to some pretty strange problems that they've thrown blockchain at. We take a completely different approach. We take does this really need blockchain? And if it doesn't, then we're not going to even touch it, because we want to be better approach. Right. We want to be really promoting the technology where it matters and steering away from where it's just vaporware. So like I say, blockchain doesn't solve everything. For me, in the supply chain piece, the real benefit of blockchain is the interoperability between supplier and purchaser, and the transparency between supplier and purchaser. Now, blockchain can't verify that what you're putting into it is legitimate. So if you're in the aerospace industry, or you're in oil and gas, or you're in whatever, the automotive industry, you're still going to need your Lloyd's register or your DNV or whoever that is to verify that the data that you're capturing is legitimate. You still need to do these process steps. But what blockchain does do is give you a record that's intrinsically connected to a particular asset, and it's completely immutable. You can't lose it in your weird library somewhere in the Siberian circle or whatever. It's going to be there. You can access it from anywhere, and you know that you can't have people bodging the docs. So once you've verified and you put it in, you know it's there forever. So I think that interoperability piece, though, I don't want to speak about it too much because for me, it's the secret sauce. But interoperability, I think, for me, is really the benefit that brings to the supply chain space.
Very cool. So another thing that I just was thinking of while while you were talking specifically about privacy is I read recently that, I mean, obviously the Facebook coin thing people have been talking about,
Yeah.
and Facebook keeps getting black eyes left and right. There was just an article I read today that apparently there's been some disclosure of some of Mark Zuckerberg's emails that were speaking to the fact that he was aware that privacy violations were going on and wasn't maybe taking the steps that he publicly stated that he was. So do you think that social media or anything like that would be a use for the Horizen blockchain at any point? Or ultimately you guys are just trying to build the platform and let what businesses may come?
Exactly. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to not put all of our eggs in one basket. We're trying to make it the best possible tool to build on top of, whilst also providing some ideas of what's possible. Could a social media solution be built on top? Absolutely. There's no reason why not. Are we the people to do that? Not a chance. None of us have any experience in that space. We wouldn't even attempt to try it. We'll stick to things that we understand, things that we know. And we're kind of, the way we're working is to create design partnerships with a variety of different companies and use those design partnerships to really understand in a lot of detail the problems that companies and organizations are trying to solve with this technology, so that we can make sure that the solutions we bring are really well honed to meeting those needs.
Speaking of your partnerships, I was watching the monthly update the other day, and you guys just partnered with Blocks.io. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and why that's going to be advantageous to the community?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So Blocks are a pretty well-established accounting and kind of bookkeeping platform. Now, I can speak from firsthand experience that trying to manage the accounting and bookkeeping process for an organization that doesn't just deal in, say, dollars, pounds, and euros, but also deals in, say, ZEN, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and whatever other crypto asset is required to keep normal operations running, becomes very, very complicated very, very quickly. Now, obviously, we have requirements to report for taxation purposes. We have multiple different asset types that are vastly fluctuating in price. I mean, even the pound at the moment is vastly fluctuating in price versus the dollar. So when you start looking at things like ZEN versus Bitcoin or Bitcoin versus dollar or whatever the case may be, you end up with a suite of assets that are never worth the same thing twice, that you have to keep tabs on. You have to make sure that you understand capital gains and losses, and you have to make sure that you're reporting accurately. Now, doing all of those things with a traditional accounting system is basically impossible. You end up using multiple Excel sheets, and you end up doing what I call kind of a mandrolic process, where you have to manhandle everything, and you have to massage to make sure that it's correct. You're double, triple checking stuff. It takes a lot of time. So Blocks.io realized this is a widespread problem, and they realized that if we really want to try and bring this technology to the mass market, we need to make sure that it's simple to use in every area. And one thing that's super important for companies and businesses is that it's really easy to do the reporting with. A lot of merchants and a lot of large organizations won't touch cryptocurrency because they know that they just have absolutely no idea how to report on it correctly. So Blocks have a platform where you enter lots of different addresses that you control for lots of different assets. You can enter your exchange information, and it will monitor your exchange accounts, and it will give you a kind of live dashboard of exactly what you hold at any point in time. And it will basically simplify the entire bookkeeping process so that you have an automated version of those crazy amount of spreadsheets that we were trying to try and do before. So it's an exciting integration for us as an organization because it makes our lives significantly easier, which allows us to focus on what we're actually supposed to be doing, which is building an awesome technology platform. And it's even better for the wider ecosystem because now anybody that's holding ZEN in amongst their portfolio has a new tool they can use to really make sure they're managing that properly and having everything they need to do things the right way.
That's awesome, man. I know, I mean, just even doing personal taxes with crypto is a nightmare, especially if you're an active trader. So any tools that help simplify that process are great. You know, when I gave my accountant my spreadsheets, she was like, "What is all of this?" So,
there are very, very few accountants that will take up your crypto spreadsheet and understand it. So I feel you for sure. And one thing I should mention, so Blocks.io is not only for businesses. As an individual, you're more than welcome to use it. It's not even that expensive. So if anybody out there is listening and has a similar problem, I highly recommend it. Blocks.io is the website. Go check it out. It's ace. I think you can actually get a free trial, but you can only, I think the free version, you can monitor maybe 5 addresses simultaneously or something like that. And if you want to add more addresses to kind of get your full portfolio, then you need to pay a small amount of money each month. But it's worth a look. There's a little shill for the guys over at blocks.io.
Fair enough, man. Got to expect you to pump your partnerships, so no problem there. I was going to ask actually about that if it was for personal use as well as business. So that's actually good to know. So going back to talking about Horizen specifically with the sidechain solutions, why would somebody choose using that over, say, a Hyperledger or one of the other permissioned blockchains? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So I'll kind of touch on what I mentioned before, but I think one of the main reasons is that we're really trying to position Horizen as the best possible solution in the market. So we recognize there's a number of big problems in the industry, and there are, for sure, a huge number of different projects trying to solve these problems. But from our perspective, the problems we see are scalability, a la Ethereum CryptoKitties. We don't want to get to a point where one of these applications, products, or services ends up grinding our network to a halt. And Ethereum suffers from that problem because they have all the smart contracting, all the applications, everything through the one main blockchain. So you imagine you have a total bandwidth and you're trying to cram more and more through it every day. Eventually, it's going to get to a point where you've saturated your bandwidth and things start slowing down.
Yeah, it's a
so scalability for us is a big issue we're trying to solve. We're trying to solve it in 2 ways. We want to make sure that our main chain on Horizen is as big as physically possible so we can squeeze as many transactions through as we can. We're doing that by investigating a few different scaling solutions, but the most likely option, or at least what's looking like the most likely option just now, is moving from a kind of standard linear blockchain architecture to a directed acyclic graph, which is a DAG, or a block DAG for us, because we're still going to be packaging transactions into blocks, but blocks will verify other blocks. And the reason that we're doing that is that it allows us to play tunes with a number of blocks that are solved concurrently. So right now we have a block interval of 2.5 minutes. We could shrink that right down, which would obviously increase the amount of transactional throughput that we have on the main chain. But the crucial thing here is that we're not building products and services on top of the Horizen main chain. We're building them in sidechains, and there's no limit to the number of sidechains that we connect into the main chain. So what that means is that if we want to build a product or a service, it's being built in a bespoke area, and whatever traffic and throughput's happening there has no impact on the main chain. So that's kind of the way we're tackling scaling in kind of 2 directions. Another big problem that we see is governance. We don't want to get to a point where we have big arguments amongst ourselves and the community about simple problems. We don't want to fork ourselves to death because we can't decide whether we should have tiny little blocks or ridiculously huge blocks or anything along those lines, not to be topical in any way, shape, or form. So governance is a big deal. We want to try and solve that by bringing in a really provably fair voting system. And by provably fair, what I mean is a voting system that listens to everybody in the ecosystem and doesn't just favor the whales that have large amounts of ZEN, but similarly doesn't overly provide power to the tiny little holders that have a 1/4 ZEN or 1/10 of a ZEN or 1/100th of a ZEN or whatever. So we're trying to make a really provably fair voting system, and we're moving to a treasury DAO, so a decentralized autonomous organization. The aim there is that we want to make this platform future-proof. We want to make sure that it's censorship-resistant. We want to make sure that it doesn't have any real single point of failure. And us as the core team, we're a single point of failure. If someone was to take all of us out, then Horizen development basically stops. We have an open source community, and we're very lucky to have good input from them. So things like that would still going. But right now, the Horizen team are the people that are responsible for figuring out what to do with the treasury. That is unacceptable to us. We need to move the treasury over to a decentralized decision-making tree. And we need to make sure that even if the team is no longer there, the entire ecosystem continues to move, and everybody that's part of the ecosystem has a say in what happens to the block rewards that go to treasury. So that's how we're trying to kind of solve the governance piece. And then the last piece for us is really a kind of mixture of adoption and usability. So they're kind of hand in hand, because we're not going to get adoption unless we make things super usable. But in there as well is things like education, which is why we have the academy.horizen.global site. So yeah, I've rambled for so long that I'm actually not sure what question I'm answering anymore, but hopefully some of that was semi-useful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you actually covered quite a lot of ground there regarding, voting rights. That's something that I think has been a mess in a number of different blockchains. I mean, EOS had their issues where block producers were basically like, "Hey, bribe us. We're block producers, so if you want to bribe us, we're selling our votes." So I think building that directly into the tech, that you can avoid that sort of thing, or whales throwing their weight around. I mean, they do that enough on exchanges and create enough liquidity off people that don't understand what they're doing. So, and then maybe it also gives some incentive to people that are part of the ecosystem that hold smaller amounts, but maybe want to learn more about it and figure out other ways that they can become more involved. So yeah, that does sound like a good thing. So I want to talk about the fundraising a little bit for Horizen Labs. I was looking at a number of different reports, reading articles on that. I saw one that said you guys had closed 2 million, and then I saw another one that said 4 million. So is the total 6 million, or was it more than that? Can you speak to that a little bit? What was the total raise on the seed round?
Yeah, I guess the only explanation here is that maybe some journalists can't do basic maths. But we raised $4 million in total. And something's a little bit different is that a large chunk of that came from us, the team. So we have massive confidence in what we're doing, and we put our money where our mouths are, and we put a big chunk of the cash up ourselves, and then obviously went out to a variety of VCs and managed to secure funding through our partners at Digital Currency Group, and also through Cedar Hill Capital. So that's the kind of two main investors. There are a variety of smaller investors as well, but those guys kind of led the charge to get us to that $4 million point. And that gives us plenty of runway as an organization to really spin up the team that we need, get the sidechain deployment tool to the point where it is ready for the market, and really start building the first few products to seed the kind of ideas of what's possible with the system.
I think that's awesome. Your team actually having skin in the game. I think that's a big deal. I mean, it seems like so many crypto projects are basically like, we have the team in the white paper, give us money. So the fact that you guys actually came out of your own pocket to help push the project forward, I think is huge. If I can shill a project that I'm involved in a little bit, Monarch did the same thing. It was pretty much initially funded entirely off of Snay and Rob's dime. And they put a product on the market before ever raising a penny. So I just think teams that do that kind of thing, it's an admirable thing, rather than the craze of 2017 where everybody was raising obscene amounts of money with white paper promises. So I think that's a really cool thing, man.
And it's worth highlighting that Horizen started without any kind of pre-mining and without any ICO. So the fundraising originally was out of the back of the pockets of the co-founders, Rob and Rolf. And then once they got to a point where they had kind of some price discovery on exchanges for ZEN, and the block reward diversion was enough to actually start paying people, then obviously they throttled down on their own expense. And now it's a kind of self-perpetuating, automated kind of funding process that keeps it moving and ensures that Horizen will have a budget basically forever. So yeah, a good way. We've got a lot of respect for other projects that do similar things. There were a large amount of ICO is kind of a bad word now, but it is a legitimate way to raise capital. It's just there are a lot of organizations that took advantage. Kids in a basement somewhere with no idea how to run a business, simply providing a white paper, like a PDF document with a bunch of promises that they probably couldn't spell, let alone execute. And somehow raising ridiculous amounts of capital, some of them in tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. And clearly that's only going to go one way. And the industry as a whole has done a bit of growing up since that happened. I guess we've now got the kind of IEO craze, maybe not craze, phase, which is so far not quite as much of a Wild West as the ICOs were. But I guess we just need to keep tabs and see how that goes.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be much less crazy. I mean, not everybody is throwing. I mean, you remember 2017? It was like everybody was like, "Oh, have you bought your first Bitcoin? Have you bought any Bitcoin?" And it's like, when did you even hear about Bitcoin, man? Like when the cab driver's telling you when to buy it, that's probably not the best time. But You know, because like if he really knew about money, I shouldn't say anything. I'm going to go down the road and start disrespecting the profession, and I don't want to do that here. But yeah, you know, I think let's say it this way. I don't take fitness advice from somebody who's not in better shape than me. So why would I take money advice from somebody who is not in the financial position that I'm at least trying to get into?
You don't want to go to a dentist with bad teeth or a doctor who's obese. I hear you. Absolutely.
Cool, man. So that has covered a lot of the stuff that I wanted to know up front. I guess we can open it up to community questions a little bit. Is there anything you specifically wanted to talk about that I have not asked about yet?
I'm here to satisfy your needs, so I'm all good. Quite happy just to answer whatever needs to be answered. Yeah, no problem.
So you keep talking because of your cool accent. Well, let me just.
Not many Scottish people on here, then.
Not too many, but man, I got to tell you, I love a Scottish accent. It's one of my favorites. So.
I'm actually speaking from Panama just now, so I'm probably one of the very few Scottish people that's living here. That's for sure.
Well, here, why don't we do this? Why don't we not? Why don't we get back out of the blockchain for a minute and just tell me a little bit about living in Panama, man. Let's humanize you a little bit. How did you end up living in Panama as a Scottish guy, and what do you love about it? Like, what's your neighborhood like?
My neighborhood here is actually really, really cool. So I moved from Scotland to Panama maybe coming up for 3 months ago. Some of my colleagues live here in Panama and have done for quite a long time. So they persuaded me that it was an awesome place to live. Beautiful climate. It's basically 32 degrees all year. I say beautiful climate. For me as a Scottish guy with Scottish blood, it's far too hot. Like it's 3 times the average temperature of what I'm used to back home. We get a lot of rain back home. Panama clearly is surrounded by rainforests, so very much a tropical climate here. Right now it's rainy season, so for the next kind of 6 to 7 months, it's going to be raining pretty full on. But the thing that really kills me here is the humidity. It's 32 degrees, which a lot of the listeners are probably saying, that's nothing. I live in the States, I live in Arizona or whatever, and it's that all the time. But the humidity is what really gets you. It means that you can't sweat properly, and it just makes it really close and clammy and pretty full on. But I'm not selling Panama very well here at all. It is a beautiful city. It has beautiful food. People are super friendly. It's much more metropolitan than I expected. I'm not sure what I expected to come into, but I didn't think it would be as built up as it is. It's kind of like a miniature, slightly rundown version of, I don't want to say slightly rundown version, I'm not selling it again, but the kind of skyline is more Manhattan than it is up and coming Latin American country. That's what I'll say. But it's a super cool place. I'm really enjoying it so far. The only downside, like I say, is the heat.
Yeah, I feel you there. I've been living in the Bay Area for the last, 15 years or so, and recently moved to Los Angeles, and it can be quite a shock. But at least it's dry heat here. Humidity, you know, I've spent some time in the South here in the States, and I know at least a little bit of what that can be like. And then. So speaking about how modern it is, I feel like that's a thing in the States, or at least, again, you're from Scotland, but I feel like in the States, people think that everywhere is like this third world country, right? I mean, I'd heard all these reports, like back at the beginning of last year, we were looking at moving the operation out to Puerto Rico, and I'd heard all these reports that it's a wreck and it's been devastated by the hurricanes, and it has, but I was pleasantly surprised with how modern it was, and I mean, it certainly wasn't like a third world country. It wasn't. I don't want to use Donald Trump's description of it, so we'll keep this a child-friendly show. But it definitely wasn't a whole country, which I thought was particularly considering that it is part of the United States, for the president of the United States to call it another country.
I don't think he knew. I think he genuinely had no idea. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, if you were surprised by Puerto Rico, then you'd be shocked by Panama, because it is several kind of levels above the kind of modernity than somewhere like Puerto Rico. It's much more up and coming, much slicker, younger. I mean, the entire skyline's 10 years old, if that. So all the buildings are still pretty much brand new. And there's a lot of business moving here, a lot of business starting here. So it's a pretty exciting place to be.
Yeah, tell me about that a little bit. I mean, how many, is it a lot of like foreign nationals moving in and starting businesses? Are there just better regulations, or what do you think contributes to that a little bit?
I think there's a few things that contribute to that. So, I mean, economically speaking, there are favorable conditions to operate a business under here. It's certainly a better place for tax purposes than most. It's a lot of foreign nationals for sure. It's an up and coming and kind of a young and vibrant market. So rather than being saturated with 500 options for every type of business, there are much, much fewer, which means that your competition is thinner, which means that your chance of success is generally a little bit higher, providing you do something right and you bring something useful. But yeah, I mean, it's a variety. There's a lot of local businesses that are doing well, but still there's fundamental issues. Things like sanitation and sewage is still done in a very old-fashioned, let's just build a canal and dump everything into that and we'll throw it into the sea somewhere. So things like that need to be fixed. There's no postal system here, which is something that kind of blew my mind. I'm very much used to ordering something from Amazon and having it delivered to my house 2 or 3 hours later in Scotland. That's not going to happen here. If you want to get something from Amazon delivered, the chances are you have to get it delivered to Miami and then use some private company to ship it down here to Panama. So kind of door-to-door post isn't quite here yet. And there's a variety of other different kind of fundamental infrastructure problems. But you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as, man, that country sucks. It doesn't even have a postal system. Or you can look at it as, that's a fantastic opportunity for a really cool business that could make a really big difference to an entire economy. So it's a land of opportunity, to quote the kind of American way of saying things.
Yeah, I find that pretty funny. I think it's, any of the smaller countries that I've been to, and I'm not super well traveled. I've been all over the United States, but haven't left the country a ton. But I find that any of the other smaller places, they seem like there's more opportunities there than not. And, the media likes to feed you a lot of fear that it's terrible everywhere. Mexico's terrible. It's, South America's terrible. And it just simply hasn't been my experience anywhere that I've been. The people have been very friendly. I mean, obviously, there's bad parts of anywhere, but there's very dangerous parts of Los Angeles. So, and I live here. So, yeah, that's always an interesting thing to me.
I'd sooner explore neighborhoods in Mexico than LA, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I certainly was filled with a little bit of fear going through a few of the border towns. And when I got there, I was like, these people are great. And, I mean, as long as you don't, it's pretty easy to tell who the cartel guys are, just, generally. I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but you're like,
Probably
that
one.
dude looks dangerous. Like, he's probably, yeah. So, I mean, don't run afoul of those guys, and it's no big deal. But other than that, I've found Mexico's great. Cool, man. Well, we are approaching up on the hour right now, so let me just post in the chat here and see any questions from you guys. Got an Irish gentleman bigging you up. That's
Nice.
That's odd, right? I mean, don't you guys? Not kidding. Let's see. Let me scroll up, make sure I haven't missed anything.
I've not been to Ireland in ages, actually. I need to get myself back there. Beautiful, beautiful country.
Yeah, I'd love to go. I haven't done much Europe in general, and it's certainly on my list.
Oh, you're missing out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just my complexion alone, I'm a pretty pale dude, so I should probably spend some time in Scotland and Ireland, and I'm sure the sun would treat me a little bit better than it does when I go to places like Mexico.
You will blend right in. That's something, I mean, I stand out like a sore thumb here because I'm 6'1", which is not that tall in most places in the world, but for some reason, people in Panama are like 2.5 feet tall generally. So I'm kind of towering above everybody else. And obviously everybody else has like gorgeous kind of olive colored skin. And it's really dark in here today because it's dark outside, but I am like bright white as it really comes. So
we could be cousins, dude. I'm looking at our photos on the YouTube stream, and it's like similar chin, like similar complexion. We could be cousins. Cool, man. Well, yeah. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying maybe.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. Let's see. Well, so yeah, Four Leaf says the Irish love the Scots. Shout out from Resin 3. Yeah, that looks like about it. I'm opening it up for questions, and I'm mostly just getting Irish people showing love. So, with that,
Awesome.
man, I guess we can go ahead and wrap up here. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Covered a lot of ground, and you're obviously very well informed, and you know your stuff. Um, Here's somebody says, does Horizon Labs plan to sell their products? I'm gonna have to say, go back in the interview a little bit, and you can kind of get an idea for what the biz dev plan is. But anything specific you guys are looking to sell in the near future? I mean, ultimately, it's you guys are working on signing partnerships for getting businesses to utilize one side or the other of the blockchain solution.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, are we really looking to sell per se? Not really. I mean, I'm VP of BD and sales. However, I kind of see it more as positioning ourselves as being the best option rather than really going out and doing the hard sell. I think if we build a solution that solves real problems, then sales will kind of happen for itself. Do we have something specific we're trying to push? No. Um, we're actually trying to make the barrier to entry for startups, enterprises, and businesses as low as physically possible. We're working on a variety of different kind of commercial models. And one of the models may even just be that we provide the solution completely free of charge. And we just take a tiny, tiny, tiny transaction fee for any transactions that happen within. So if you're a startup and you've got a super amazing idea to bring to market and you need some sort of hybrid blockchain solution, then the Horizen Lab solution would be completely free up front. And being a startup, that would be super attractive. And if you get some traction, then we share some revenue. And if you don't get some traction, then no harm done. There's a variety of different commercial models, but we're basically trying to make it as easy as possible for people to start building on top of this system. That's the aim here. It's more about education, and it's more about trying to kind of navigate to the people that have the problems that we can really help solve.
I think that's awesome, man. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. As far as mass adoption will come when people don't realize that they're using a cryptocurrency or blockchain tech, because ultimately nobody cares. Like we do because we're early in the space and we're fat. You know, I'm pretty fascinated with the tech. I would imagine you probably are as well, since you've been directly involved for so long. Um, so it's but the general public, they just want it to work. They want it to look pretty. They want a nice user interface, and they want it to work. So
Totally.
it's great. I mean, I think honestly, the last during the bear market time, that's been actually huge for seeing new things develop, better products, better interfaces, um, all that kind of stuff. So I've been watching a lot of Crypto Beatles interviews lately, and I like Brock Pierce's saying. What does he say? Bull markets produce bullshit and bear markets bear fruit. And I was like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
that is interesting for sure. It's true though. I mean, the organizations and the projects that are surviving and that are thriving and have managed to weather the storm are the ones that buckled down, made themselves more efficient, lowered their cost base, and focused exclusively on trying to deliver some sort of value. Build a product, build a service, make yourselves useful. It's those organizations and those businesses that will continue to achieve and continue to do great things. And it's the ones that are kicking back on the beach with $100 million under their belt from an ICO that are going to phase away into nothingness. It's just the way things are going to go. We're in a super immature industry. It's just time. The industry is growing up slowly but surely.
yeah, it's definitely it's. I mean, just 2 years. It's worlds apart from the Moon Boy Lambros of 2017. They're still out there, obviously, but
Oh, they
uh,
are. I kind of miss them. We had a pretty dedicated following of when Moon, when Lambo type guys in our Telegram groups for ages, ages and ages and ages. And then I think we got fed up with trying to moderate it because it was just impossible. And none of us like moderating. We're all about freedom of speech and stuff. So the idea of trying to moderate something just didn't feel right. So instead of us having to do it and not feel right about it, we just deployed a bunch of bots. And now the bots are there and the when Moon, when Lambo guys and girls are gone. I almost kind of miss them, almost. The weird constant barrage of memes. But again, it's a sign that the industry is starting to grow up. It's the type of people that are jumping in is changing. We're getting a wider spectrum of people rather than just a bunch of really early adopting geeks, which is kind of what we've had until now.
yeah, I agree. It's crazy to go to different conferences and things and see. It used to be a lot of hoodies, I'll say. Which being from the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, there's a lot of hoodies in tech anyway, but there's a lot more suits at these conferences lately. You know, that which, and I'm using that as a broad term, but you know, there's a lot more serious business people. There's a lot more people that are maybe more mature in the way that they're approaching it. So I think that's only a good thing for the industry in the long run. I mean, you know, it's funny to see the stages have gone from like crypto anarchist to, you know, the current state where now we're talking about issuing securities on the blockchain and things like that. So it just watching the evolution is kind of a trip.
The big thing here though, and it takes, I don't know, the way I think of it is that we're trying our best to deploy a new system that provides power and control back into the hands of the people that really should have it, and provides optionality for people to really decide whether or not they want to participate in different systems, and gives them an out from the traditional space. And that's all great, that's all fine. However, we're never going to completely eradicate traditional financial products, traditional banks, things like this. These organizations are basically essential, and they may not have the best practices, we may not agree with the ethics they work under, but they provide a bunch of different functions that we do need. And I think our job as an industry is to show them that there's a better way of working, and to demonstrate that really we do have the power to influence and the power to provide technology that can make their products and services easier. But ultimately, we're not going to get any kind of success unless we can find a way to make the new finance world, the new cryptocurrency and blockchain space, communicate really effectively with the traditional finance world. If we can get the two to mesh together, that's when we're going to really start making progress in terms of mass adoption. That's when we're going to have, rather than having a couple of thousand people jump into an ecosystem every month, it's going to be millions. That's where really the value is. So the first people that can kind of get interoperability to really work between traditional and, I guess, new finance are going to be the ones that really bring it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, man. That's spot on. You know, I say all the time when people are talking about like, oh, crypto revolution, and I'm like, grandma's not using your wallet, and your parents aren't going to, you know, they don't want to send you your college fund or whatever on the blockchain because they don't understand it yet. There's got to be bridges, and so I think, you know, products that are looking to help kind of bridge that gap, it's just going to be the natural evolution. And you hit it spot on saying that, I've lost my train of thought, but it's specifically about showing them the way, showing them that there's a better way, right? And I think also with people having options and being able to choose other services, you know, hit them in the pocketbook where it hurts for the businesses that aren't, you know, vote with your dollars, start going other places and finding other ways to do things, and they'll have no choice but to evolve. And you know, if everybody is trying to be a more evolved, higher version, then maybe those traditional systems will have to come along for the ride.
Absolutely. And there's people out there that don't want custody of their own funds. I mean, ultimately in cryptocurrency, the main benefit is, well, there's two main benefits. You know in advance what the emission curve looks like. So you know that it's a finite asset, or in most cases, it's a finite asset. So for ZEN, we know there's only ever going to be 21 million, just the same as Bitcoin. So we know that we're not going to have people keeping on printing more and more dollars, pounds, euros, or whatever, and diluting the money supply and making your holdings worth less. We know that upfront straight away. And that's a fantastic benefit, and that's a big pool for a lot of people that come into here. It's one of the biggest. But the other big pool is that you can actually take custody yourself, and you don't have to rely on a third party to hold a copy of a ledger or to hold your balance, your funds, and you don't have to rely on a third party to transact between people. So that's kind of the other really big benefit. However, not everybody in the world wants the responsibility of taking custody of their own funds. I mean, already we're seeing an explosion of different cryptocurrency custody firms, because as larger enterprises, products, or enterprises and businesses move into the space, they don't want the headache of custodying their own funds, their own assets. They want to give the responsibility to a trusted party and let them do it. So I think the banks will never disappear, because people will never want to take entirely custody of their own stuff. People don't want that responsibility. I think a vast amount of people do, And clearly the people that are in this space now are among those people that do. But I think there'll always be a space for the banks. I think it's just up to them to really grow up, or not so much grow up. I think that's the exact opposite of what they need to do. It's almost like they need to turn over a fresh page and understand that there are other solutions out there and other ways of doing things. And they don't need to take a week to allow your dollars to settle from just down the street. You can have it done in a couple of minutes, have it done in 30 seconds, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I think it's more about just providing new tech and collaborating, finding a way to let the two industries or the two eras of technology kind of mesh together and bring better value for everybody.
And it just takes time. I mean, think about, I'm guessing we're probably roughly of the same age, but think about how bad the internet used to suck. And then it took, computers getting a little bit better until the internet got a little bit better. And I honestly think the internet wasn't really quite what it is today until the smartphone got invented. And from there, it was just, like commerce on the internet significantly changed, and as well as like social interaction and things like that, all from the smartphone, and that's pushed other technology forward. So I think it's just it's a matter of time before we get something similar happening with cryptocurrency, blockchain, and distributed ledger.
And we just recently saw Apple say they're releasing a cryptography kit, and they've been very careful not to mention cryptocurrency or blockchain or any kind of buzzword. But they're providing a developer kit that makes it nice and easy for developers to handle cryptographic proofs. And we're also seeing companies like Samsung include cryptocurrency wallets within the core build of some of their flagship smartphones very, very soon. So it's already happening. We're already getting that same kind of rollout. And it's going to get to a point where people have at their fingertips easy access to the infrastructure and the products they need to really handle cryptocurrency. And it's going to make a massive difference.
So I'll ask a personally biased question here. Speaking of the phones rolling out with hardware wallets and things like that, what are your feelings on mobile wallets versus actual hardware wallets? Like, do you think it's necessary for Samsung to include a hardware wallet within the operating system, or do you think that mobile wallets are secure? Obviously, I'm asking this question because I'm involved with Monarch, which is a mobile wallet, but I'm just curious for your perspective on that. Do you think it's necessary? Because I know the the Fini phone has a built-in cold storage wallet, but it runs supposedly on a completely separate operating system within the device. And I believe that's what I read about the Samsung phone as well. Do you think that is necessary, or do you think that you're involved in a privacy token and technology? Do you think that these developers are actually significantly advanced to be able to write an app, so to speak, that should cover all of that?
I do think it's necessary, but it's necessary for a reason that you may not expect me to say. I think people need options. I think we have not just one problem for one person to solve. We have many, many different people with many, many different desires, many, many different sets of requirements. Some people will be comfortable having a few $100s in a wallet on a mobile phone that's not particularly secure at all. Because it's only a few $100s, and they know it's walking money, and it's no different to having a few $100s in their pocket and then losing that. So that product has a place, and it fits a need, it fits a solution, it's simple, it's easy to get your hands on, fine. And if somebody wants something a little bit more secure and they still want it to be mobile and on them, then you've kind of got the next layer, which is the kind of mobile wallet that's using some sort of secure element or secure chip. So your keys are kept segregated from the rest of the phone. And you know that even if your phone gets hacked, it's very, very difficult for them to at least remotely extract those keys. And then you have hardware wallets, which are kind of the creme de la creme. So you have, although if somebody gets their hands physically on your wallet, there's still every chance they can get access to keys. But generally speaking, much, much, much more secure. Designed for a purpose. So I think every type of wallet has a different kind of solution to provide. And everybody has a different risk profile of what they're comfortable with. I know people that walk around with much more than they should in a mobile wallet. And I know people that are super happy with that, and it's fine because they have backups and they know that it's all good. But likewise, I know people that will just religiously keep everything in a hardware wallet, and they won't even be comfortable having a tiny amount of Bitcoin or ZEN or whatever on them at any time. So yeah, I think options are important. Everybody wants something different.
Fair point. Yeah, I mean, I certainly stay diversified. I use mobile wallets. I've got a Trezor and a Ledger, and I've probably even got a few old web wallets around somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, as long as you get the private keys, if you think it's been compromised, just import your keys into another wallet, and then you don't have to worry about it. But
And make sure they're on a flash drive, and make sure your flash drive is properly encrypted so that if anybody gets their hands on it, they can't just immediately see what it is. Yeah, absolutely. Multiple backups, multiple places, all the good stuff to make sure that you're suitably protected.
Yeah, gotta follow those best practices.
Yeah, for
Listen,
sure.
man, this has been awesome. I don't want to keep you too long. I want to be respectful of your time, especially with the hiccup at the beginning. Anything else you want to say to the audience before we go?
I guess the last thing to say is that if you like what you hear, please follow us along. You'll get us on Twitter at Horizen Global and at Horizen Labs. So give us a follow. Website is horizen.global and horizenlabs.io. The majority of our community hang out in Discord. You'll get links to Discord on our website. So yeah, if you're interested, jump in. If you have something that you can provide and you're talented and want to participate, then let us know. We're open source. We're always looking for new talent. I'd love to hear from some of the community for sure.
Awesome, man. I'll be sure to post those links in below the video as well once we wrap up here, so that if people are watching it, they don't have to go far. They can just click the link and go find you guys.
Cool. And I myself at Rowan RK6, if anybody wants to follow me along.
Right on, Rowan. Well, hey, man, this has been a really fun conversation. Thanks for bearing with my technical hiccup at the beginning. I really appreciate you making time. And, I told Rob and Rolf this. You guys are welcome on anytime. I enjoy discussing with you guys and learning from you. And, it's been a great conversation. So thank you so much. We'll go ahead.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
My pleasure. Take it easy.